Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.
Wavelength.
Mental illness doesn't have to be a life sentence.
Alcohol addiction, abuse, misuse is the same all over the globe.
Sparking the combos about Adelaide.
So it made me feel very confident that if we did have it in the state, we were going to know about it.
You should be having.
There'll be guys that are trained, but they don't feel like they're good enough to take their shirt off.
Almost everyone is a culprit of doom scrolling. Anyone who has a mobile phone.
On Fresh 92.7.
Welcome to Wavelength, sparking the combos about Adelaide you should be having. I'm your host, David, and tonight I'm joined by Hamish for the first time in ages.
Hello.
So good to have you back, man.
It is so good to be back. I tell you what, it's been a minute, hasn't it?
It's been like a couple of months, I feel.
I tell you what, yeah, real high profile person here. I had to, pull a lot of strings to be here today.
You did, and you're on thin ice as well, so watch what you say.
Yeah, I know.
You know what happened last time, Hamish?
That's it. I'll be right back out. Go right back on the bench. All right, this is my shot. Better not mess it up.
Have you been enjoying your time away from Wavelength? I mean, I enjoyed my week off last week, but it is good to be back though.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's good to have that time off, but it's good to come back recharged and ready to go. What have you been up to in that time, David?
Oh, who knows? I can't even remember yesterday at this point.
Oh, mate, I'm right in the same boat as you, but yeah, look, I did want to say something, though. I actually went viral over the weekend. No, I didn't go viral. I guess that's a bit of hyperbole for me there. But I did shoot a video that went viral. Yeah. I was on the Popeye, which is where I work, and we were cruising past Pinky Flat, and we came past this guy, and he was pretty much completely starkers, completely naked.
No way.
Yeah, pretty much just in these little hot pants, the tightest little hot pants you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Wearing rollerblades.
What?
And this guy was absolutely jacked. Like, honest to God, he was like cut from stone. And he was just like doing the moonwalk and like flexing, doing the Arnie, like the Arnie Schwarzenegger, power pose. And I tell you what, we had a hens party on the hens group on the boat, and they were just losing their absolute minds. And so I got the camera out, started taking the video, of course, flicked it through to Just Adelaide Things.
Of course.
And what do you know, next minute, 500,000 views later, and
That's what we love to see here.
You love to see it.
I'm checking that out.
Yeah, you got to give it a sus, and any listeners out there, head on over and you'll see what I mean. Enjoy the show.
Well, what have we got on the show for us
tonight on Wavelength, smoking has to be one of the hardest things in the world to quit. So how can we make it easier for ourselves? This week on Wavelength, we're exploring some options, and we're also asking, have we glamourised vaping too much?
Wavelength is also going to explain why a major video game developer is taking on Apple in a massive legal stoush. But next, we're taking a dip into the new phenomenon that's sweeping Adelaide called salty sips. You're listening to Fresh.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength with David and Hamish tonight, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. There's a new early morning event taking Adelaide by a storm. It's called Salty Sips, and it's seeing people come out in droves to take a very, very fresh dip in the ocean and a good dose of yoga on top of it too. Jamie spoke with organisers Nikita and Lily all about Salty Sips.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
And now we've got the girls from Salty Sips, Nikita and Lily, who have created something that's taking Adelaide by storm. Essentially what these girls started doing was going for a swim at sunrise once a week, and now they've gone from 200 to 300 people at the crack of dawn in winter to all go swimming together.
Keith and Lily. So Lily and I started off Salty Sips a few months ago now. Started out just the two of us going for a morning swim, and we decided to open it up to anyone who wanted to join after Lily came across a similar initiative in Perth called Cold Nips. And so we sort of opened it up to our friends, and then they brought their friends, and then we started up an Instagram, and before we knew it, we had 450 people coming out. But basically it's a community connection-driven initiative which just encourages people to push themselves out of their comfort zone, get up early in the morning, take a dive into the freezing cold water, and then go out for a coffee afterwards and just connect with one another, which is really nice.
It's a really beautiful thing you guys are doing for the community because it really brings people together. And it grew from just you two to hundreds in a matter of months. How did social media play a role in your growth?
You know what? It has literally been the biggest part of the natural growth that we've found. And the way that it started is that when there was only 6 of us, we all asked someone to bring someone new for the following week, and just naturally people would post on their social media, and then that would reach out to their friends, and then when someone else decided to join our group, they would also post on social media, so it would reach their friends again. And it was just, we were finding that each week it was growing by 20, and then another 40, and then another 70, and then 100.
So you've also started organising some physical activities in the mornings before. What else have you guys got planned coming up?
Well, when we first introduced the yoga, we had lots of different people reaching out, showing interest to incorporate what they do with our group. So it's been like Pilates, cycle. This isn't physical activity as such, but we had a meditation. We went for a run to celebrate Global Running Day. We have a physio group coming out, Physio Smart. They're coming out next week, and they're going to do a movement session with us. So I think our aim with it is to sort of include yoga 3 times a month, and then on the 4th week introduce some kind of random and different physical movement. It's been really actually so powerful to see 100, 150 people gathering at 6 a.m. in the morning and moving our bodies together. You recently partnered with Batia, an organisation that addresses mental health in Australia. How important is Salty Sips in correlation to mental health?
Super important. I think after experiencing ourselves how much of a positive impact it has on our own mental health, that was like a huge drive for why we wanted to sort of partner up with them. But then not only that, after a few weeks or kind of straight away, we were getting feedback from people that were going and saying, look, this is actually really helping me at the moment. This is what I'm struggling with, going through mental ill health or just going through a bit of a slump at the moment, but this is really picking me up, so thank you. And we get a lot of messages from people now that, people that we don't even know, that just show their appreciation and sort of share a bit about their story, about what they're going through and how it helps. So it made sense to bring that side of it in. And it's something that really, Batia really focuses on smashing stigma around talking about mental health. And that's a huge thing at the moment. Like, people need to be able to feel safe and comfortable to be able to talk about it, so then they can actually start on their journey to recovery and or improving their mental health. So what's your Instagram handle? If people want to wake up at 6 a.m. and launch their bodies into some icy cold water with everyone else, where can we find you on socials? Firstly, we would absolutely love to welcome anybody. That's something that we preach by to everyone that is welcome. But our Instagram is Salty Sips ADL for Adelaide. Cool. Where starting time sort of changes as the sunrise changes, but at the moment we're dipping at 7 a.m. and then the physical movement is at 6:30. But yeah, it's absolutely open to every single human. We want to make it as diverse as possible, so we would love whoever and everyone to join.
Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having on Fresh 92.7.
That was Jamie chatting about Salty Sips with organisers Nikita and Lily. If you want to find out more about the morning swim, which takes place every Wednesday at Henley Square, chuck them a follow on Instagram at Salty Sips ADL. Anyway, come
Wavelength.
Night about quitting, smoking and vaping.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Smoother flavor that you favor, my counts better in many wonderful ways.
The use of e-cigarettes has become widely popular with younger people. 26% of young adults aged 18 to 24 use the devices to smoke, while 9.6% of kids aged 14 to 17 have also tried it. Despite what we know about traditional cigarettes, vapes and e-cigarettes are a relatively new technology. To better understand how it's being advertised and impacting us, I talked to Associate Professor Jonine Jancey from the School of Public Health at Curtin University.
Well, I suppose e-cigarettes haven't been around a very long time. They were introduced to the US market back in 2007. So the long-term implications are less known, but they're not harmless because they contain organic compounds, heavy metals, and flavours that are meant for ingesting rather than breathing in. So increasingly there's evidence coming out that they're injurious to the vascular system and the respiratory system, the lungs. But beyond that, for young people, the real problematic or concerning issue is that when you're young, your brain doesn't develop until you're in your mid-20s. And they found that nicotine exposure can impact cognition, memory, learning, attention. And also the other issue is that if you vape, there's a 3 to 4 times increased likelihood of you going on to use cigarettes.
What kind of impact can e-cigarettes have on us that we might not consider?
The younger people can become addicted to nicotine quite readily. So when you look at these dual disposable products like the pods, they cost, say, for $13, $14, $15, and they're equivalent, their content is equivalent to a pack of, 20 regular cigarettes. What they also do is use nicotine salts, which what that does increases the levels of nicotine that you can absorb and also makes it less irritating. So they're developing these products that are really quite potent and at prices, because a pack of cigarettes is $50, yet you're paying, say, $15 for this pod. So there's all these strategies to get people in, and particularly youth.
Do we know how people under 18 are able to get their hands on these products?
They're glamourised on social media, and there's links to the websites of companies that sell these products. And the unfortunate thing is there is no ID required to purchase these products. It's often just a click on a button, I am 18, because you require no evidence. So they estimate that through surveillance that more than 70% of purchases of e-cigarettes are online. So that's where it's occurring. It's easy. They use their credit card or debit card and it gets sent to them in the mail.
Is there a better way to be able to regulate that type of internet access at all?
So all these platforms have, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, they all have policies around advertising tobacco products. So, for example, Facebook and its subsidiary Instagram state that advertisements must not promote electronic cigarettes, vaporizers or any other products that simulate smoking. Yet it seems that this is occurring on their sites, their platforms. So it would seem that these social media platforms need to take control of their content and enforce their policies. Perhaps government needs to put pressure on these social media sites to enforce their policies. And also there needs to be a better mechanism around indicating if you're over 18 and you can purchase these products, because it's pretty easy to get around.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength. We'll be getting back into our story about quitting smoking very soon, but now we're cracking into our weekly segment where Hamish explains what the hell has happened this week.
What the hell is going on this week? Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Hello, and yes, a fair bit happened this week, but when isn't that the case? First up, we started the week, of course, with the Queen's birthday. The one day of the year you better believe we're happy as Larry to still be a part of the monarchy. Who said what about becoming a republic? Of course, the Queen, who turned 134, also took the time in between cutting her cake with a ceremonial sword. She's so quirky. To bestow a number of our citizens as officers of the Order of Australia, which I can only assume is some sort of title that allows its recipients to act above the law, our greatest minds banding together like some sort of Avengers, assembling their powers, combining Captain Planet style. I mean, look at the list of recipients. Neil Danaher, Nicholas Spurrier, Thor himself, Chris Hemsworth, and... Wait, this can't be right. Peter Credlin got it? Scratch that. This clearly means nothing. Moving on, health authorities have advised that no one under 60 should receive the AstraZeneca vaccine when a woman died after receiving blood clots, and everyone has predictably proceeded to lose their absolute shit about it. Now, if only we had another vaccine, one that was safe for those under 60, which we could give to them instead, and wait, we do. So in other words, keep calm and carry on. This news comes in the wake of another cluster of COVID cases in Victoria, which has unsurprisingly seen thousands of them flee their home state, more than 18,000 of the dirty Vics crossing the borders into SA, and I guess Dan Andrews was right. Who'd ever want to come here? Victoria isn't the only state bringing shame on the nation, though, as an outbreak has been recorded in Sydney too now, which Dan Andrews is also being blamed for. Just makes sense. And finally, of course, this week West End poured last drinks as the iconic brewery rolled off its last keg, seeing out its final day of production, bringing an end to over 160 years of South Australian history, and it's a big hit for the state. Is nothing sacred anymore? What will be next? Farmers Union iced coffee, the big statue on Scotty's Motel, frog cakes. Will this state have any culture left? My guess is no. And that's what the hell has been going on this week.
Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having on Fresh 92.7.
Thanks for that, as always, Hamish. Some great topics there.
Yep.
So, the Queen's birthday, our good mate Nicola Spurrier.
What a queen.
She got the B-Day honours.
Yeah, and so well deserved, hey.
Can't say the same for Peter Credlin.
Yeah, that kind of just throws a little bit of... It discredits it a little bit, doesn't it?
Look, if I got an award and Peter Credlin also got the award, I'd be like, I don't want this award anymore.
Actually, you can have this back. I don't need it.
Also, Crook, the AstraZeneca vaccine change.
Yeah, look, it's frustrating. It's frustrating because stuff like this really sets things back so much and just really starts that whole cycle of vaccine hesitancy all over again.
Well, thank you so much for that, Hamish.
Wavelength.
Trying to quit a bad habit can be hard. For those that smoke or used to, going cold turkey can be the ultimate challenge. A study at the University of Flinders is looking into providing guidance for those who want to shake the pattern. To get to the bottom of the problem, I talked to research fellow Elissa Mortimer about why it's hard to quit and how their research hopes to help others.
When you think about smoking, it's often something that is an intergenerational thing. If you think about it with a family, with children, for example, if the children grow up where smoking is normalised and just something that everybody around them does, then you can imagine that when they become adults, it's sort of a habit that might just be adopted without much thought. And similarly in workplaces, like if you think about a workplace and everybody has a smoko at 10:30 in the morning and the employer sort of enables that, again, it becomes something that people might just sort of fall into and then have a difficult time getting out of.
The study will guide people in small online sessions split across 4 randomised groups. Cognitive, behavioural and mindfulness techniques are being used to try and help people build resilience.
It's important to remember that what we're doing with the Flinders study actually also incorporates the elements of quit approaches that we know currently do work, and that includes behavioural counselling along with things like nicotine replacement therapy. So the current best practice for quitting cigarettes is that behavioural counselling, and many people would access this through Quitline, as well as nicotine replacement therapy if somebody has a nicotine addiction, and then possibly also with stop smoking medication, so things like Champix, for example.
So with the participants that you've had and the focus of them being in lower socio-economic backgrounds, do you see that they usually fail more than once when they try to quit?
Yeah, well, that's a really good point. And what we do know from the data is that what's currently offered in terms of helping people to stop smoking is less effective in lower socio-economic populations. And we're not really sure why that is. But what we do know is that for those populations, we need to provide something additional to what's currently offered. So that's where the Flinders study comes in. We're testing something that will really focus on building people's resilience. And we hear a lot about resilience these days, and that's because it's so important for so many things we want to achieve in our lives, and including something like quitting cigarettes, which is actually really a difficult thing to do.
Would you say that the trial is aiming to focus on the mental and emotional aspects of why it's hard to quit?
The focus of the study, in terms of it addressing resilience and how to improve it in the population, we're looking at how to assist people with how they think and behave in their everyday lives, and that's where the cognitive behavioural therapy comes in. So because when you're quitting something like cigarettes, there might be an actual physical result in terms of withdrawal symptoms and cravings. So that's often where people who are trying to quit find it really hard to maintain their quit effort. So if they've just got a craving and it's really hard to manage in their day-to-day life, then sometimes they'll end up smoking again.
So if some of these interventions are proven to be quite successful, is it possible that in the future we can see them used on a wider scale to help people quit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think something like mindfulness is where we're getting a lot of people focusing their attention on these days, because it can be applied to lots of different situations. So not just for quitting cigarettes, but absolutely, if these approaches are shown to be effective in this study, then it could be applied much more broadly.
Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having on Fresh 92.7.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having.
Right now, we've got our weekly segment called Wavelength Explains. This week, Paul is going to explain a massive legal stoush between a digital giant and one of the biggest video game developers in the world.
Wavelength Explains on Fresh 92.7.
One of the biggest stories in the tech world today is the Epic Games versus Apple lawsuit. The creators of Fortnite, Epic Games, are suing tech giant Apple for not allowing other payment methods to be used in apps that are hosted on the Apple App Store. This comes after Epic Games challenged a 30% cut that Apple takes on each purchase made on the App Store. In August 2020, Epic Games just had enough and literally just bypassed Apple's 30% cut by putting in their own payment method within the Fortnite app. They even offered a discount to customers who made purchases directly through the app. Apple pulled the app off the App Store, and this led to Epic Games filing the lawsuit for antitrust and anti-competitive behaviour. Apple countersued, stating Epic Games breached their contract by bypassing their payment methods. And Epic Games did the same with Google. Epic Games bypassed Google's payment system, and the app was pulled from their store as well. They also charge a 30% cut on purchases made on apps hosted by the Play Store. However, the focus, for whatever reasons, seems to be heavily on the Apple case. Google is stressing that it's not the same situation, as they don't have the restriction of developers only selling through the Play Store on Android, like Apple does with their App Store, and they're supposedly negotiating with Epic Games very differently in comparison to Apple. Another rule that Apple has is that they do not allow developers to increase the price as a result of the 30% take, meaning developers have to just bite the bullet, and consumers are forced to give 30% of their purchases to Apple, probably even unknowingly. Whatever the outcome of the lawsuits will be, they'll have an impact on where consumers' money goes. If Epic Games wins, this proves that Apple's and Google's rules on the 30% revenue take on purchases is too much and would most likely have to be reduced, giving developers a bit more of a take on sales, and potentially even lowered cost for consumers if developers wish to pass on the win to the customers as well. However, if Apple or Google wins, this means that their rules are deemed okay in the eyes of the law, and developers and consumers will just have to live with them. The trial finished in the US on May 24th, with a decision coming later in 2021, and the case is set to happen in Australia in August, with the ACCC getting involved as well as a non-party, given its wide implication on the Australian economy and consumers. Definitely a story to keep an eye on.
Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having on Fresh 92.7.
There was Paul talking about Epic versus Apple.
What a big legal dispute.
Yeah, what a heavyweight fight. Two of the biggest boys in the play yard.
Yeah. I mean, there's also Epic versus Google, but like Paul said, it doesn't seem to be as interesting as the Epic versus Apple one.
Yeah. I really don't know what side to pick. I mean, one is Apple and one is responsible for Fortnite. So both pretty bad.
I mean, like Paul said, the 30%, people giving 30% of what they spend on the apps to Apple. I had no idea that I was doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems sort of dodgy that they don't really put that up front.
It seems unfortunate as well because, there's so many indie developers that resort to mobile games these days because, it's a really easy platform, obviously, and it's a really easy way to get their name out there. The overheads are a lot less, but that doesn't really matter when Apple comes in and takes 30% anyway, which is huge.
That's
really
huge.
When
30%
you think about
of all revenue.
30% is massive.
Just going to
massive
Apple.
Cut.
What?
And I can understand why Epic has kind of stepped in and gone, because could you imagine how big that pay cut, that chunk
for them
must be for them? We're talking millions of dollars going into Apple's pockets. So,
just from Fortnite.
Yeah,
alone,
that's
because
right. Exactly.
That game has to be one of the most profitable things on the planet at the moment.
Yes,
it's probably more
of a cancer that just keeps growing, isn't it?
You probably make more money of Fortnite than you do of mining. I think all mining companies should just pivot to making...
Next minute, Gina Reinhardt has bought out Epic Games.
Yeah, she'll probably just start like developing like a new shitty mobile game.
Yeah. It's got to have lots of really bad dances and we'll be fine.
I mean, there's a decision coming later this year on that case and also one in Australia with the ACCC involved, and we'll let you know the outcome of all that because it's definitely a very interesting story.
Yeah.
Good to know about your consumer rights sometimes.
100%.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Right now, we've got our favourite weekly segment called Heaps Good News. This week, Hamish, you've got the goods for us.
Heaps Good News on Wavelength.
Plenty of good news to get through this week, which is an unexpected but welcome surprise. So let's jump in. This week, one of the biggest circuses in Vietnam made the decision to end the use of bears in all their shows and voluntarily handed over 4 moon bears to a non-profit animal rights group who will now find a sanctuary for the retired performers. It's a big step towards moving away from the use of animals in circus performances, and Hanoi Central Circus now joins a growing list of 15 circuses in the country who have made similar calls. The bears will also be reunited with 2 of their old friends who were successfully released by the same animal rights group 2 years ago. Our next story features another furry friend. Why is most of the good news out there always involving animals? And that's right, because animals are awesome. A therapy dog by the name of Digby did something very special this week. He saved a woman's life. Digby is normally used to helping firefighters deal with trauma, but went a little outside his skill set when police negotiators were called out to deal with a woman standing on the edge of a bridge in England, threatening to take her life. Police were quickly losing control of the situation when one of the fire crew suggested calling in Digby. Once he arrived on scene, the distressed woman immediately took to him and a conversation began about his role at the fire service. The woman was then asked if she would like to meet the clever canine, which she did, prompting her to come back over the railings and descend the bridge safe and sound. And in a bid to combat the ever-present threat of global warming, a country-wide campaign in Ghana saw citizens plant 5 million trees this week in hopes of saving the nation's depleted forest reserves. The highly coordinated event saw the government offering free seedlings to people from every corner of the country, and it's hoped this will offset some of the major deforestation that has occurred in the highly tropical region over the last 100 years. Finally, wrapping up, a police officer landed in the headlines for all the right reasons this week, with a rookie cop in the US responsible for saving the life of a choking newborn baby, which was caught on his body cam, while 2 of our own officers went viral after they were captured buying groceries for a homeless person in lockdown Victoria. And a 10-year-old Nigerian refugee in New York has just become one of the youngest national chess masters in the world. So hopefully you'll be reminded this week that despite all the crazy, horrible chaos that seems to engulf us all in its relentless fury, there's still plenty of good things going on all around us.
Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having on Fresh 92.7.
Thank you for that, Hamish. It's always a pleasure to hear the good news. And I did see this on Twitter earlier. It's about Digby, the beautiful therapy dog.
Yeah.
It's from an article in the New York Post, and it's probably the most inappropriate use of puns I have ever seen.
Oh, no.
So let me read out the start.
Me.
Let me read the start of this article.
I'm excited.
A woman in danger was fortunate enough to receive a positive visit from Digby, a therapy dog, on Tuesday. Digby helped to save a woman from taking her own life when she contemplated jumping off a bridge. Now, I love a good pun.
Wait, where was the pun in the last one?
There was none. That's why it's so inappropriate. I love a good pun, but come on, time and place.
Yeah, read the room. Oh. Read the room, man.
Oh, yeah, you almost killed yourself, but here's some great puns.
Yeah. Any opportunity to squeeze them in there, right?
No wonder people hate journalists.
Yeah. It makes complete sense.
Oh, anyway, that brings us to the end of the show tonight. Thanks for listening.
Yep, make sure you're subscribed to the Wavelength podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can listen back to our old episodes right now, and you'll be the first to know when tonight's episode goes up.
That's right. Thanks for joining me this week, Hamish. Pleasure to have you back in the studio.
Wavelength.
Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.